Okay, today we're looking at the skip ram, so we'll be building it all together. I'll start off with the easy bit first, which is the actual skip itself. We were quite lucky on this because there was virtually no work to do on the skip at all. The only work that I have done is to drill and bush the ram mounting at the top, so that was bored out to 4mm, and the bushes are 4mm reduced down to 2mm, so the actual pin or the bolt is a 2mm M2. So that part of it's the easy part. Now, to get it all working, I've had to do quite a bit of cutting on the cradle, which is this piece here. I've cut away virtually all the bottom face, so there's only really the arms and everything left. But that was all done to incorporate the ram and the motor. This piece here, this rail here, it was cut away to incorporate a beam, this bit here, which is a bearer for a limit switch. So it's a case of pinching it on. It actually sits onto the existing rail, so from the front view you've got that there, and I'll actually put the little screw in. So there's a little tiny M2 grub screw that goes through, and that will be an adjusting screw to finely tune the ram travel. So when the ram comes up, it will bear against this little grub screw. The little N20 motor, and I've made up a motor housing to sit it in. So this actually slides in and has got a cover on the top. So this section here is one of the limit switches. So as the ram comes up, this is unscrewing. So this piece here, okay, is the outside of the ram. So we've got a M2 hole in the top, and I've put a M4 brass riser and turned it down and just glued it into the end of there. So that's quite a good screw thread. So that will actually screw onto there, and if I put the two side by side, you can see the length of it. So when that is right down on there, the end of this thread is just about showing on the end of the pivot. So that's its minimum travel, and it will travel all the way out to there. The switch is one of these. I've actually soldered it onto the surface of the strip board. The component underneath is a diode, and I use 1N4148 diode, and that so this is normally closed, and then when you press that switch in, that will open the circuit, but it actually goes through the diode, so the current can only pass through the diode in one direction, so it makes it a turns it into a limit switch really, and that you can reverse out of. Now we've got the motor situated in the housing. The next thing will be to put the top cover on. So that's just held on with a couple of M2 by 8. I'll just screw in the ramrod. Now the ramrod is made out of a section of telescopic aerial, so it's one of the sections just cut down, and I've used an M4 brass standoff and just turned it down to sit inside this tube, and glued it on, or glued it in, and the ends I've just used a piece of foam and then tied it down with a piece of heat shrink and just formed the end just to cap that off. So I'll screw that in. So the motor's nicely in there. This is still turning, that's fine. So everything's in line and squared up. So the next bit that we'll come to will be the mounts. Okay, so there's a left and a right mount, and they screw onto, or they sit onto the lugs of the motor. So the pins of the motor, so we've got one each side. That's him there. So they're sat on, and they're held on with M2 by 10s. That far. The next thing would be to bolt it onto the bracket, so that would go through. That sits inside there, inside the rails, and 4 screws, M2 by 8s again, in through the 4 holes there. Okay, so we've got the brackets bolted on. So that actually bolts the motor onto the mount. So you can see I've kept the centre line so that when the ram is right down, it's pretty much laying central, but I've had to move it back so that the ram can retract far enough, or there's enough length on this ram to bring it through its travel. So we've got the limit switch here, which bears up onto this bar that we fitted earlier on, and that is adjusted by the M2 grub screw that's inside that hole, so I can fine tune it. But at the moment it's set, and if I be quiet a minute and take the ram up through, you can hear the click on the switch. So when the ram reaches its maximum, it will come up, bear up against that switch and cut it out. Okay, so we're looking at the cradle and the ram assembly, and I've got 2 limit switches, one for the upper part which is installed there, and that's got a bracket printed onto the motor housing itself, so as the ram comes up it butts up against this bar and operates on the upper limit. On the lower limit I've got a switch there, and when the ram comes down to its minimum, butts up against that one there. The underside here is just a piece of strip board, and I've got the diode across the two contacts there. So that's it there. Got two wires coming away, and it's now ready to accept the hub assembly. Okay, so I've got the cradle bolted on to the turntable hub, so that's held on with these four M2 by 10 socket edge screws. I've temporarily wired it up to a JST plug to plug into the Arduino to test it. Okay, so bushes to install into the skip, so they will be installed there, and that is to pick up the end of the ram, so that's the next job. Okay, so I've fitted the top mount now. I'll just take it over to the electric bench now and we'll test that out. Okay, managed to squeeze it all in, so I've got the radio here, so this is actually controlling the switch. There we are.